It off. All right. Well, today is July the 28th, 2023. Unbelievably, we are over halfway through with 2023. So big question is, are you ready? Are you ready to finish out the year with a blast? That's the $64,000 question. We've got a lot of people on the call today that are not benchmark-ins. So this is a little bit of a vulnerable thing going on here because it's a company meeting and I'm opening it up to everybody because I believe that the educational component is very key to what's going on in the industry today. We have almost the perfect storm forming, but format of the meeting, typically this is a webinar, but this was already set up as a meeting, so we didn't want to change the link. But the format is we'll do a little bit of housekeeping just for benchmark. Then we'll do some benchmark numbers. Those are typically the portions that are just for benchmark. So you can kind of zone out or you can listen in. It doesn't really matter. I'm just being totally open here with the industry. As I said earlier, we have principal brokers and affiliates, agents joining us all the way from East Tennessee, East North Carolina, all the way out to California. We're very grateful that they find what I have to say worth listening to. So that's a good thing. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Phillip Cantrell. I'm the CEO and founder of Benchmark Realty. Benchmark merged with United Real Estate in 2020, and at about a year ago, I took on an additional role of EVP of strategy for United, the larger corporation. So we'll have some disclaimers and stuff going on here in a minute, but when we get to the educational component. So structurally, we're going to do housekeeping, we're going to do benchmark numbers, then we're going to do nationwide market numbers, which should be interesting for everyone. And then we'll get into the educational component, which in this case, we're going to talk about the storms that are on the horizon. So let's get started here. I want to give a shout out to Momentum Title, our sister company. We've got a few new gimmies for benchmark-ins there. Your first closing's free. Your personal home is free, not your investment home, but your personal home is free. Your personal investment properties are 50% off. There's only one closing fee if they get both sides, and it's shared between each the buyer and the seller. And then always there's a $500 credit for veterans and first responders. So keep them in mind when you're filling out the blank for who's going to close the property for you, because that revenue helps pay for the free tools that you benchmark-ins receive. All the items that you see on the screen there are free to you and important to help your business. You can find all of them on Benchmark Dash. You can also find all of the things that we have going on here on the events calendar on Benchmark Dash. We've modified the way we're doing this. You're now registering for events on the Dash. So when you click a date, and it will open up what's happening that date, and you can click on the event and you can register right on the event on the Dash. So that makes it a lot simpler process. No more Eventbrite, none of the confusion that went along with that. It should make it a lot easier. Also remind you of the middle section here, specifically the agent resources and the other products and tools that we offer. All of these tiles use SSO integration. So when you click on that tile, you are logged into your account on that other website. So that's a great time saver in your business if you'll utilize the Dash, and you'll keep up with everything that's going on with Benchmark as well. I also want to remind you down here in the lower right-hand corner, if you run into something that stumps you and you can't really figure out where it is, I can't find it, all you have to do is click the chat and the bot will pop up and will help guide you to the location of that product or that item that you're looking for. Specifically the benchmark policy manual, how you get commission structure, all that stuff. It's all right here on the Dash. So to utilize that, it's available to you 24/7, 365. When you do click on the agent resources, the red B that you see there, it brings up a whole other page of all kinds of cool stuff. Benchmarks exclusives, the forums, these recordings of Friday with Phillip, home bidding guide, everything. You just scroll on down. There's tons of information on there to help you. How to submit your docs to paperless pipeline. We have a complete video series on how to do all that. So there's really no reason for a benchmark-in to struggle in the middle of the night. All you have to do is click the tile and you'll be logged in. Our training calendar for July was pretty busy. Our training calendar for August is even busier. We'll pop that up, and these are the hard copies that you see hanging up in all the benchmark offices. You can use the QR code. You can go to the Dash, register for the class, and rock and roll. Elevate, our national conference is coming up. The United Real Estate National Conference is coming up. Lee Brown is the keynote speaker. If you don't know Lee Brown, you need to go Google and find out who Lee Brown is, because she is a very wise lady, very easy to listen to. The whole conference is $499. 2 hours of Lee Brown is $500. You're going to get all this for the cost of one speaker. So that's pretty strong. We have new speakers coming on board. The one that I'm particularly excited about is Greg Grant. He is a chat GPT and an AI specialist, and he's going to explain a lot of that stuff to us. If you're an old person like me, it's way up here. So this will help understand what's going on in that world and how to utilize that tool. And just a reminder that the room discounts are just about closing out. August 7th is the last day for the room discount. So you want to go ahead and book your room and sign up if you want to. We have so far 44 Benchmarkians going, and we've been pushing these out on the closed group on Facebook so people know who's going and who's not going. And if you want to get signed up, then we'll put a graphic out there for you too, and you can have a little bit of notoriety for a day. But we welcome everybody. Also remind you about discoverbenchmark.com. If you are doing a deal with another agent on the other side you think would be a good fit for the benchmark culture, please point them to this website, or you can point them to Bo Zivak. Bo will actually reach out to them, or you can point them to your principal broker. We do incentivize that. We actually have the TAP program going on, the talent attraction program going on right now, where if you refer an agent to us that qualifies, there are qualifications, but they qualify, you'll get $500 when they join and another $500 in 90 days. So we're going to pay you $1,000 for every agent that you bring on board. That runs through September 30th. So you better hurry up and get them in. Help your people. Help your people. Help us help you. The new affiliate will actually get a $500 marketing package on the Bullseye Marketing Hub, which will pay for their signs and business cards, surely, unless they want to do something really fancy. There are qualifications. You need to look those up. I'm not going to go through them now. They have to have at least 8 transactions in the last 12 months. That's the main thing to keep in mind. Smart Dollar. We're making a lot of progress with Smart Dollar. This is the Ramsey Solutions product that is provided for you, Benchmarkians, free of charge. It's a get out of debt tool. It's a budgeting tool. It's a financial management tool. And so far in 60 days, we have over 350 participants, and we have a financial turnaround of $102,000 as of this morning, which is a big milestone. That is nearly $700,000 turnaround on an annual basis. Use the tool. The budget, if you don't have any debt, great. If you don't have any problems with your money, great. There's a tremendous budgeting tool on there that will help you in the future. And in a world of irregular income like we live in, the budgeting tool is key. So you want to lean into that if you want to. It's kind of interesting that we took a survey of the participants, and I want to share this with you because it, for lack of better description, is testimonial. So we give them a survey when they join, and we give them a survey on a regular basis. And so when they started, 27% of users felt overwhelming stress about money. And yet now, and by the way, this now is last week. And by the way, Mr. Gerald, if you quit marking on my screen, I sure would appreciate it. But the 27% felt overwhelmed with money. Now 13% feel overwhelmed with money. So they're becoming comfortable with money, and that's important. When they get started, 46% of users felt somewhat confident about retiring comfortably, and now only 27% feel somewhat comfortable. So that's an interesting statistic there. What that means is that using the budgeting tool, they're beginning to realize and having an oh crap moment about their money, that they're really not as in good a shape as they thought they were in. So that gives them the opportunity to learn, to improve, and increase the financial welfare of their family. And then this one also, the last one is 13%. Said only 13% said they spend what they make. And once they got into it, started using the budgeting tools, the financial management tools, they realized that 31% realize again that they're in trouble with their money, that they spend more than they make. So those are real aha moments for the participants. And one thing I want to point out is that your information in this system is 100% confidential. We can see who's joined, and we can see the gross financial turnaround. We cannot see your individual bank account. We cannot see even your individual name and what your progress is along the baby step continuum. It is 100% confidential, and it is behind a firewall that we can't see, Ramsey can't see, no one can see except for you. So I wanted to give you that assurance that Ramsey has spent millions of dollars on their IT system to make sure that it is 100% secure. So you can have that confidence. Now, if you are beyond all that, you got plenty of money saved up, you're ready to talk to a financial manager, we have that option as well. We have made a deal with Creative Planning in Overland Park, Kansas to offer financial wealth planning services to our affiliates. Investment management, strategic tax planning, financial planning, estate planning, trust, retirement planning, and insurance. They do all of it. We can connect you. I'm serving as the filter on that. So if you're interested in that program, drop me an email at Phillip@Benchmark Realty TN. Okay. So some company numbers. And again, this is the phase 2, part 2. So you non-benchmarkians, again, can clue out on this or find it interesting, whatever floats your boat. We're going to show it to you anyway, because we're just kind of opening the whole kimono today and showing you everything. But here we are. June snapshot of 2022. In 2022 in June, this company closed $517 million of the real estate. We paid $13 million in commissions on 1,020 transactions. With an average closing price of $507,000. The market at the same time did 4,257 transactions. So by market, I'm talking about the greater Nashville, Middle Tennessee area. Moving that to 2023, well, we're down. So is everybody else, right? We still did $428 million, paid over $10 million in commissions, 861 transactions, while the market did 3533. And our sales price dropped just a little bit. To be clear, that sales price is our sales price. That is not market prices. And we'll talk more about market prices here in just a second. But the key comparison that we hone in on is how did we do compared to the market? And we beat the market. We were only down 15.6 and the market was down 17%. So that is outstanding. And we'll keep those numbers in mind because we'll come back to those when we get to the national stats here in just a second. Likewise, inventory was down slightly from the end of May, but still up from June of last year, from June 30 of last year, and our affiliate count increased 2.8% during that time period. So we're very grateful for those changes there. That's the only green that you see on the screen, but in a year or so that's been pretty tough, we're happy to see any green on the screen, right? So that's where we are. On an annual basis, year-to-date basis, how does that stack up? Well, at the end of June in 2022, we had closed $2.5 billion in real estate. We paid $62 million in commissions, 5,319 transactions. The market at the same time had done 21,000 transactions, and an average sales price of $479. This year, we're down, negative numbers, okay? So 1.9, just under $2 billion. The gross commissions at 48%, 48 million, transactions 4221, market was 16,000 and a 468. Again, we do this comparison here, and again, benchmark is beating the market, so we're pretty grateful for that. So this is the slide that always blows everybody's mind. What we do is obviously we track on our gross sales 2017 to 2023 in gross sales, gross commissions, and transaction count. And you can see that I have dropped in June's numbers here. That's a lot of numbers and everybody's eyes are going like this, but a picture tells 1,000 words, right? So this is that information graphed, and you can see along the bottom here 2017 all the way up to 2023 and the color coded above. In comparison of 2023 so far, you can see that we are actually tracking right alongside of 2021 there. So on gross sales, gross commissions, the same chart, the same information. And again, we're tracking right along with 2021. Hopefully that the last half of the year doesn't dive off like it did in 2022, but we'll see. And we'll just see. Transactions is the one we care about because we are a fee-based model, so we get paid per transaction. This is the one that kind of gives you the comparison. You can see that we are actually tracking right on top of 2020 right now, and right kind of along with 2019 on transaction count. So not bad, could be a lot worse, but if it just points to the fact of what outliers 2022 and 2021 were. I mean, it's absolute total outliers as far as the entire market. And it's reflected in our numbers too, because with large footprint that we have, we're going to pretty much reflect the market. Okay, speaking of market update. This is now where I move more into the national scope of what's going on in real estate in the world. And a lot of this data you don't have access to and you can't get. But I'm happy to share this with you if you want to. But here we are, June existing home sales now running at an annual turn rate of 4.16 million. That is down 3.3% month over month and down 18.9% year over year. So go back to the local market and go back to the benchmark numbers. Local market was what? 17%. Benchmark numbers were what? 15.6%. So not only is benchmark beating the local market, we are beating the national market as well. But that gives your clients the indication. You can see right here where we had the dip. And then we went up, had that nice little pop in January, February, and now all of a sudden we sloped off and continue to slope off. And I think that's going to continue, actually. We'll talk more about that in a second, but you can see the line here. And this is a 3-year view. So it goes back and you can see where we are relative to the rest of the year. The years past, I should say. Go back to a 10-year existing home sale chart. This is exactly what we're seeing again. June is not reflected on this chart, so I drew a nifty little red arrow in there to approximate about where June would be. And you can see now that we are down below or right at the lockdown period, the COVID lockdowns, when the market really went to crud. And that's 10-year view. You hear a lot of note about, well, it's the worst it's been in 12 years. It's the worst it's been in 14 years, whatever the number is. My research shows that, well, the media has been saying 14 years, worse than 14 years, but my research shows it's actually the worst in 12 years, the lowest point in 12 years, so 2011. You can see it there on the graph on your screen, that the existing home sales are now running at a 2011 level of closings. A lot of people ask me, when are we going to get back to 6 million units a year? Just shaking my head. I'll show you some predictions here in just a second, but that's a long way off. But the interesting part is that on a national basis, and we're seeing it locally as well, and I'm sure most of the people who are not from here are seeing it also, is that prices are not declining. They're not declining. You can see a 3-year view, and you can see exactly how it lays out here. We're only slightly off the peak of June of 2022, which is really phenomenal. And if you go back even further, that's a 3-year view you're looking at there. If you go back to 2020, which is an 11-year view, you can see the graph, you can see the trend, you can see that it's clearly only off and the trend line is up. So you hear this, and particularly you brokers out there will hear this from your agents. Well, I sold them a house in 2021. They may not have any equity. Well, home prices are not declining. Home prices are not declining. And the big question is why? Lack of inventory. These are your new listings coming on the market right now. And you can see that, again, we're only off slightly. New inventory is not coming online. We're not building enough homes. I mean, there's a lot of noise about new home starts and new permits reaching an absolute high level of whatever. They are a larger percentage of homes on the market today simply because the existing homes on the market has declined. So when you have one item that stays the same and the other item that usually comprises the whole gets smaller, then this one is going to be a larger percentage, isn't it? And that's what we're looking at. That's exactly what happened. Here's another reason why it's happening. What you're looking at here is mortgage interest rates in the percentage. This is the total mortgage interest rates as a percent of mortgage. Okay. You can see on the left-hand side of your screen, less than those that have a mortgage less than 2%. On the right-hand side, you can see those that have a 7% or greater mortgage. And this is the point that I want to make right here is that almost 92% of all mortgages in existence today are less than 6%. Those people are not going to move unless they have to. And that affects your inventory. Let's take that another step further. 82.4% of all mortgages in existence today are sub 5%. 62% are sub 4%. And 23.5% are sub 3%. So if you got a 3% or less mortgage, you're not going to be motivated to go up here and pop a 7% mortgage out there, are you? Unless you have to. Now, with that said, people still have to move. They inherit grandma's house and have to sell it, right? They have a baby, need another bedroom, have to move. They get a job relocation, they have to move. They're still going to have to move. The steadiness in the markets, if we in the mortgage rate markets is what I'm trying to say. Once we can get that leveled out and stop all this jumping around, and it is beginning to level out at about 7%, then things begin to pick back up. You know, the Federal Reserve met the other day, and everybody expected them to do a 0.25% interest rate pop. They did a 0.25% interest rate pop, and what happened? Mortgage rates actually dipped. That's because they already had that anticipatory built-in price mechanism in the mortgage rates. So as long as the Fed does what everybody expects the Fed to do, it's steady. If the Fed makes a surprise move, it's not. That's how it goes. By the way, my prediction, one more increase this year. You can write that down if you want to on this date, July 28th. Phillip said that, whatever. But there are positive indicators. This is First American Financial, which is title insurance orders, a national company that has a significant market share of title insurance orders. You can see on the left, these are closed orders, and you can see the upward trend there. And then on the right, you can see the purchase open orders. So these are closed, and these are closed, and these are the ones that are open. You can see they are both trending upward. That means market activity is increasing off of the lows of November 22. That's positive, right? Another positive indicator, pending home sales. Pending home sales actually had some green on the chart month over month, 0.3% increase month over month, but still down 15.6% year over year. And you can see here in the middle in the regions that Northeast and Midwest did the best, South and West pretty much flat, just barely off. And you can see the graphs down here, but you can see how it works. The pending home sales go like, it's got to go pending before it becomes a contract. Before it is a contract before it becomes a closing, right? And that's when it moves over to the existing home sale. So the question mark is about this positive number here is kind of negated by this number here, because this is the first mid-teens year-over-year decline since May of 2022. So the question mark, is this an aberrational pop, or is it a trend line? And all we can know from that is to just wait and see. All right. So what does the future look like for real estate? These are amalgamation of Mortgage Bankers Association, Fannie Mae, and NAR's predictions averaged out. You can see we're right in here. Those three, when you average them together, say we're going to finish up this year at about 4.3 million run rate. Next year, 4.7, 2025, 5 million run rate. The 6 million run rate we had 2 years ago, back here in 2021, it's not going to happen for a long time, And I'm not the only one saying that. So anyway, those are the numbers. Appreciate y'all staying with us for the non-benchmarking and hanging in there. Now we get to the meat of the matter. This is a conversation that a lot of folks ask me about. And to be clear, this part is not so much about the lawsuits themselves, because we are going to have to talk about that to give you some background. It's not so much about the lawsuits themselves as it about suggestions on how to navigate as a buyer's agent, because it are changes that are coming and you need to get ready for them. And if you don't get ready for them, you're going to have a problem in your business. I want to start out with a disclaimer. And I don't usually do this, but since I have non-benchmarkians on the call, I felt the need to do this. First one, I am not an attorney. If you have legal questions, please consult one. I am not a licensed insurance authority, nor am I a CPA, although I do have most of a master's in economics, like a thesis and 2 classes having a master's in economics, and then life and family and kids got in the way, so I never finished it, whatever. Seek professional advice. To be clear, we will not discuss commission percentages or guidance on specific fees, and doing so would be considered collusion. Hear me clearly. All commissions are negotiable between the buyer, the seller, and their agents, period. We will not discuss that. I will not answer questions about specific fees, nor will I answer questions about specific percentages on commissions. The research and views expressed here, except as noted, are my own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of Benchmark Realty's parent company, United Real Estate. They did not ask me to put that in there, but I put it in there because I want to make sure that they're covered. But do know that I am a Tennessee licensed real estate broker with 22 years in real estate and a 41-year business career, including several years as principal broker of 400 plus agents when we were smaller. I possess a list of designations about as long as your arm, have served on just about every committee at the local association, including the board of directors, and am CEO and founder of Benchmark Realty. In my career, I have personally represented nearly 1,000 clients in real estate transactions. I do not sell real estate anymore. I work on the business instead of in the business. And that's when we begin to grow. So business owners, take note of that if you'd like. That's my disclaimer, and I'm sticking to it. Okay. So the T360, I want to say thank you to Jack Miller and his crew. They have really done an outstanding job in researching this. The trends report, which you can actually see the blue books over here on the bookshelf behind me, that's the trends report, and I study it religiously every year, and it's one of the best pieces of literature that's put out, research and data and information about our industry. Some of what I'm presenting here comes from them. Some of it comes from Stevens Financial. Some of it comes from my own research elsewhere, as well as my dear friends, James Wiggins and Rob Hahn, notorious ROB. He actually spoke at our expo last year and was a big hit there. So I give credit to everybody because I pulled a little from here and a little from here and a little from over here and put this together for you guys today. We have, as a buyer's agents, having the conversation on commissions centers around the buyer's rep agreement. If you're operating from another state and you don't have a buyer's rep agreement, you need to hire an attorney and get one right now, because the buyer's rep agreement is key, crucial, and critical to our success and survival in the coming storm that's happening here. But we don't like to talk about it. We don't like to talk about it. It gives us great fear and morbid trepidation because of this. I messed that up. But anyway, there is a section there, section 3E, that's a clause that talks about compensation. Okay. Compensation is where you're going to get paid as a buyer's agent. And I can't tell you how many times we see these documents come in and they are executed on the same day that the offer is executed. We'll talk more about this in a minute. But if you continue that practice, you will be out of business. This document must be executed at the beginning of the relationship because it establishes your agency relationship with that buyer. A lot of times people don't do it because they're worried about trying to get both sides of the commission. Stop it. Things are changing. Pay attention to the buyer's representation agreement and follow what it says in there. There are great benefits to it, obviously. We know we should do it. We just don't do it. Number one, it establishes a formal legal relationship, right? It is a clear communication of the buyer's needs, you and the buyer, your capabilities and the buyer's needs. It commits the buyer to you. It gives a definitive valuation of your time. Do you want to be a professional or do you want to be a tour guide? Your choice. This document guides that. It gives a clear path to your compensation, creates productive and efficient working relationship, and in relationship building, because expectations are set at the outset of the relationship. So relationship building pretty much was mentioned 3 times in that one little list. It's about building the relationship. And if you're afraid to have an honest conversation with your buyer about how you get paid, then you don't have a relationship. It's not an equal relationship. So you must have that on the front end. We'll talk more about it in just a second. So why are we concerned about it now? Well, class action lawsuits are coming clear into focus. There are 3 main ones. Moehrl, which was filed in March of 2019. Trial date's not set yet. Covers about 35 states. It's a big one. It's a really big one. Sitzer Burnett was 2 separate suits that were combined in Missouri, filed in May 2019. Certified as a class action in 22, trial date set for October 16th with a backup date in February of 2024. Nosalek, December 2020 is when it was filed. All 3 of these, we'll talk about briefly what the complaints are, but they're all making claims under the Sherman Antitrust Act and state antitrust acts. One thing I want to point out clearly, so this is the one to watch right here, Sitzer Burnett, because that trial date is coming up in October. They may get pushed back to February, but it's coming up sooner than the others because the others don't even have a date set yet. They're still going through the discovery process. These are federal courts. These are federal judges, all 3 of them, okay? The plaintiff in both Burnett and Moehrl are asking for an immediate injunction against guaranteed shared compensation. Did you hear what I just said? They're asking for an immediate injunction. Now, it's true these court cases may take 3 to 5 to even 7 years to work their way, and undoubtedly at least one of them will end up in the Supreme Court. But a federal injunction survives the appeals process. So it's important to prepare yourself now, and that's why I'm doing this now. So you can begin to prepare yourself so that whatever happens October 16th or during that trial, October, February, whenever it happens, you and your agents, if you're a principal broker, will be ready and prepared and able to navigate the waters. Once Sitzer Burnett goes to trial and comes out of trial, whatever the resolution on it is, whether it's an injunction or not, we don't know what's going to happen, obviously. That will set the pattern for all the others. And not only will it set the pattern for all the others, but it will also set the pattern for any other copycat lawsuit that wish to play pile on at the moment. So the potential here is huge, huge, with a capital H-U-G-E. You need to take this stuff seriously, and it appalls me that our industry has pretty much poo-pooed these lawsuits. I even had one major industry executive look me square in the face and said it was a bit of a tempest in a teapot. It is not. It is not. I have two words for you: asbestos industry and tobacco industry. These are the same attorneys, the same law firms that had those class action lawsuits successfully adjudicated. So what are the allegations? There are five basic claims. First one is inflated compensation, including the broker and agent inflates the compensation of the broker inflates home prices. You and I both know that's hogwash, but whatever. You can make your own judgments on whether or not these are valid claims, but these are the claims. Steering to listings offering higher commissions, of which clear cooperation is claimed to be an enabling factor. If everything must be on the MLS, then allegedly agents could filter out those with lower compensation and not show them to the buyer. And everybody says, oh, well, that's not happening. I have seen it happen. I have stopped it in my own firm from happening. I have fired agents for doing it. It happens in every real estate brokerage. Trust me, it happens. Hampered buyer agent compensation negotiation prevents the consumer from negotiating lowest cost for their transaction and allows subpar agents to remain in business. We'll talk more about the quality of agents here in just a second. I do not want to get into dispersions of anybody, but let's be honest, it's real easy to get into this industry, isn't it? Okay. Unilateral offers of compensation inhibit competition. Guaranteed shared compensation policies hamper competition as all agents get paid the same regardless of the quality of service level or their knowledge of the industry. And the catalyst for all of it is clear cooperation. That's what triggered this whole thing. That's what made people start looking, saying, well, if I've got to do this or I've got to do that, even if I don't want to, then I don't like doing that. And that's part of the problem. The major defendants and the co-conspirators, you can see on the screen there, pretty much five large real estate brokerages, including the National Association of Realtors. And there's a whole bunch more that are praying that they don't get named. But the co-conspirators are pretty much every MLS in the country where you could actually search by buyer compensation. Fortunately, RealTrax never allowed that. Our local MLS never allowed that. So we are very glad that they were not included in this lawsuit. But, you know, as the thing expands, who knows what's going to happen, right? We just don't know. So the impacts, it's gonna disclosures of contracts specifically, it's going to impact your upfront disclosure of fees and commissions. That's where we're talking about the buyer's rep agreement, right? Explicit fees. You're going to have to be explicit about the fees. It will change how buyers agents engage with their clients for sure. On the agent and consumer side, there's going to be fewer agents. Possible limited buyer pool. How can a first-time home buyer finance a buyer's agent compensation into their agreement? In fact, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac won't allow that right now, so that's something else we can talk about in a minute. Continued commission compression. We've had this 3%, 2.7%, whatever numbers you want to throw out there, but it has been compressed over the years, and this will further exacerbate that compression. And it could possibly lower home prices. We don't know. These are potential impacts. NAR policy changes already have come into place that displaying of buyer broker compensation MLS websites and in IDX feeds have been, they're doing it. It's required now. So used to be you could put a listing out there through IDX and exclude the buyer broker compensation. Now you can't. The consumer, the belief is the consumer has a right to see that. Prohibit buyer brokers and agents from advertising your services as free. That policy is already in existence. We'll talk about do's and don'ts in just a second. Don't you dare say your services are free as a buyer's agent. Okay. And prohibit filters of listings by compensation. So let me be clear on this. And different executives in the industry judge the potential damage at different numbers, different dollar amounts. Some as high as $60 billion, some as low as $2 billion, what the damages are. And these are professional class action attorneys. They're not interested in putting companies out of business. They're interested in getting paid. So there probably will be settlement on all these things, and we will continue in a modified relationship with our clients. But hear me clearly when I say that the damage claims are in the billions, and that is going to be a problem for our industry to pay. If you go back to those companies I showed you as the primary defendants, imagine if you took $1 billion and split it by 5, that's still a boatload of money for each of those defendants to pay. And that's the low end of the estimate of the damages, because this goes back for 15 years of claims, 15 years of home buyers and sellers claiming that this has happened, that they paid too, that they overpaid, or that they've the prices were too high. For 15 years, it's a lot of money. You can run the numbers however you want to, but it doesn't really matter because it still starts with a B, a billion. And the impacts are already beginning. You've seen it in the news. Mounting pressure on the industry, and MLS agrees to settle a commission lawsuit. This is MLS PIN, which is a broker-owned MLS. They are in the Nosalek case. They agreed to a settlement of $3 million. They proposed, and the plaintiff agreed to it, to a settlement of $3 million. And if you know anything about class action lawsuits, the guy or the gal out the door first pays the least. If you go back to the tobacco industry lawsuits, the penalties were charged on percentage of market share during the process, and the ones at the end paid a higher dollar amount per percentage of market share than those on the front end that settled it early. So MLS PIN is a broker-owned, non-realtor-owned MLS, and they've already settled and they're out. Now, two things to note here. Number one is that the plaintiff attorneys had to look at their books to understand how much money they had before they ever agreed to it. And number two, MLS PIN now has the obligation to cooperate with the plaintiffs in persecution or prosecution of the other defendants in the case. So a tremendous amount of knowledge and information has been opened up to the plaintiff attorneys because of the settlement. And I think there probably are multiple other MLSs that are on the verge of settling as well. Keep in mind, they were a co-conspirator. They were not a defendant. So if a co-conspirator can settle for $3 million, what is it going to cost the defendants? We don't know. The other one that you hear is a Bright MLS, one of the largest MLSs in the country. They have now allowed $0 buyer broker commissions. So that means no shared compensation. They've essentially already done it. The big deal here is that they are a realtor-owned MLS. So they are supposedly governed by NAR rules. But I seriously doubt that NAR is going to challenge them. And NAR rule of guaranteed shared compensation is one of the big deals in the lawsuit. Two things to watch. Watch those two settlements, and as MLS changes. Now, you can say in the case of Bright MLS, they went from $1, which meets the definition of cooperation, to $0. So it really wasn't that much. We're already seeing it here in our MLS, $1 buyer compensation. You're still required to show them the house as a buyer's agent, okay? This is why. And we've had it in our organization where agents would get to the close and say, well, it only pays me $1. What do you mean it only pays me $1? That's what was advertised. That's what was advertised in the MLS. It's permissible in our MLS. Our MLS has never defined where it had to be a percentage or whatever. They just said cooperation. So kudos to them for that. But in this case, we have had agents get to the closing table. They didn't have a buyer's rep agreement signed. They weren't getting any compensation from their agent. And guess what? They walked away from the closing table $1 in commission. So watch that progress. There's a range of potential outcomes that go from status quo to worst case on these lawsuits. Status quo is where we are today. Guaranteed Guaranteed shared compensation for buyer's agent remains in place. Nothing changes. Buyer's agents can negotiate additional money if they want to. Worst case, over on the right-hand side, sellers are actually prohibited by law from offering compensation to buyer's agents. Buyers must pay the buyer agent out of pocket, and this will absolutely crucify the publicly traded real estate company's stock because their earnings have just declined dramatically. Most real estate brokerages are 50% buy side and 50% listing side. And if 50% of their business suddenly goes away, if the laws change to that extent, big if, then those companies are going to have a serious problem. The most likely is the one in the middle there. Sellers offering buyer agent compensation is optional, but guaranteed shared compensation goes away. Buyer's agents can negotiate compensation through seller's agent and or compensation from their buyer client. Clear cooperation goes away. MLS has become morphed into open data platforms for consumers and for agents. So they become data companies instead of a private organization only available to realtors. That's the range. It is a range. So it'll be somewhere between the left and the right on where it settles out. But my estimation is the most likely is there in the middle. Now, to be clear, the listing agent can still suggest to the client, let's include something for buyer's agent. So from a certain standpoint, listing agents are still able to drive this process a little bit. That's going to be a whole lot less important on expensive houses than it will be on the smaller houses, for sure. Once all these lawsuits are settled, however long that takes, then we have these two wild cards in place. That's the FTC and the DOJ. And let's not be confused. What I've just talked about with lawsuits is federal court class action lawsuits. It has nothing to do with the DOJ conversation that you keep hearing about in the media. That's a whole different conversation. DOJ is watching it closely. Honestly, my personal opinion is the DOJ is sitting in the background waiting for the class action lawsuits to do their job for them. The FTC in July of 2021 was issued an executive order on fair competition in the United States that said you will investigate the housing industry because we believe it drives up home prices. The realtor housing industry you will investigate. So the FTC has already received their mandate through executive order back in 2021. In my opinion, is both of these guys are just sitting in the background waiting to see what's going to happen with the class action lawsuits. We'll see. Those are the wild cards. To their credit, T360's issued a wake-up call to the industry in this letter. It was published pretty much everywhere you could find anything related to our industry, and it has some very good points in it. And please, I hope real estate principal brokers in America read up on this. The main part is this in the middle, the action steps, the recommendations for key constituents following. They're talking about NAR issuing a code of ethics to mandate buyer representation agreements. I don't know that that's a bad plan, but I think every principal broker should mandate it as of right this minute. Brokerages should, as soon as possible, require signed, executed. Again, it goes back to the buyer's representation agreement. And then agents should review their sales and marketing materials for buyer services and update accordingly. Listing agents must update their materials to address how and any agent representing buyers are compensated, the pros and cons of sellers offering or not offering compensation. So it's about communication and drawing closer to your client, the whole process. And the bottom paragraph down there is everyone should be prepared to discuss these lawsuits and their impact with their constituents and have materials and models ready should a change take place. To be clear, all of these are in process. No laws have changed yet. No mandates have come down yet. We're all in process. What I'm trying to do with this whole thing is get you guys ready. Get your mindset going of how am I going to prepare for this potential outcomes, potential consequences of what's happening in the legal system. So let's start with the do's and the don'ts. Do, discuss and sign exclusive buyer representation agreements at the beginning of the relationship. It is what establishes your agency relationship and also establishes your compensation. And do present a comprehensive buyer presentation detailing what you do for them, explaining your value. Do track your time and activities that you spend working with clients, and then engage in education, with or without designations. It doesn't matter. It is proof that you are a professional, so you can communicate that to your client. I don't know where it came down the route, but somewhere they said you got to have a listing presentation, but you don't have to have a buyer's rep presentation. We'll talk about that in just a second, but the buyer's presentation is becoming crucial in explaining your value proposition to your client. The don'ts. Don't say your services are free. Don't say your services are paid by the seller. Don't be a transaction broker. Establish your agency relationship on the front end and stick with it. Don't devalue your services. Your family depends on how you manage this conversation. That is the most important thing I can tell you today. If you don't learn how to manage this conversation with your buyer client, you will not be in business 18 months from now. Let me say that again. If you don't learn how to manage this conversation, you will fail. And the survival is resident in the buyer presentation. So you have a listing presentation, right? Everybody's shaking their head. In the competitive future, to be successful, you will have to have a buyer presentation. If you're benchmarking, we have one on the dash. Okay, we've already done the work for you. We got the listing agreement. We got the listing presentation on there. We got a buyer's rep presentation on there. You can take these Canva documents and you can download them and you can hybridize them, customize them to you. And you can even add, with our broker branded cloud CMA, you can even add current data into the presentation. What does a good buyer's presentation include? Well, it's info about the company. It's info about your success as an agent, market insights, current trends, explanation of what buyer agency is. We don't ever explain this. We must begin to explain this. A roadmap of the home buying process, what to expect, your unique value proposition, services and support you provide as an agent, and then client testimonials for sure. That's proven results. Now, if you have a listing presentation, what I just said sounds just like a listing presentation, doesn't it? It should. It's the same thing. It's just the other side of the coin. But if you've never done one, let me offer some tips and guidance here. It all starts with just writing down a raw list of what you do. The yellow notebook paper and a pencil, just make a list. I did a video a few weeks ago, or a few days ago, about this same topic. Start out writing and writing and writing and writing, and you come up with about 60 items that you do. Okay, nobody can really understand that when you're trying to present it to them. So you want to then hone it down to about 10 to 15 items of what you actually do, what the buyer process looks like, and then put it in a pretty graphic. These are a couple that I found online. One is from John L. Scott, and the other is from Park Group out in Idaho. It's just a graphic that is easy to understand. A picture tells 1,000 words, right? We said it a while ago when I was showing the benchmark numbers. A picture tells 1,000 words. You're just putting it in a cool graphic. And if you need a graphic design person, go online, Google it. There's 50,000 of them waiting to do this for $10. You don't have to spend a lot of money at it. You just have to focus on it and concentrate on what you're doing. You also want to include some housing cycle information, market trend information. Give them data that shows that you know what you're doing. The worst thing you can do at this point in time is just show up and be a tour guide, because you are a dead person walking, figuratively, of course. But part of this process is learning how to handle the basics of objections. Okay. 4 steps. You learned this in College 101, right? Acknowledge the objection, explain the value of services, offer alternatives, and be prepared to walk away. And that's the one that I see so often agents have struggle with. They're afraid to lose a buyer client. If the buyer client is not doing what you want them to do, what you need them to do to be successful in your process, you have to be able to walk away. It's just simple. So let me give you some example objections here. Okay. So one that you might hear would be, I want to represent myself and save some money. Saving money is everybody's thought process these days, right? So my suggested response is take them back to the services provided that you showed during the buyer presentation. There's that word again, buyer presentation, because you established the relationship on the front end with the buyer representation agreement, and the buyer representation presentation talks about what your expectations are and what they can expect from you. For example, let me walk you through the steps in the process so you understand the work involved. Here's what I'm going to do for you, and then lay it out. Representing yourself may not end up saving you any money and may actually end up costing you money. Okay, so lay it out, have an honest conversation. I don't know why in our industry we're so mortified of having an honest conversation. It's a shame. Strategic alternatives, consider unbundling your services, at least on paper. For example, I'll show you 10 houses and you're going to pay me X amount of dollars for that work. Or if the person is a professional photographer, perhaps you say, I usually pay X dollars for professional photos. If you want to do them, provide them to me. Here's the portion of that we'll give you, or discount our rates. A couple of ways, just a couple of suggestions. The way I used to do it when I was listing presentation or even buyer's presentation is I would have a unbundled a la carte list of products and services that I offer. If you added all those up, it was actually more than the percentage I was quoting as a discount. So they felt there was value in the price. And it was a normal rate that I was pricing over here, but the a la carte system gave them the option, and that's just it. It gives the buyer client an option to do something different. Okay. They might not take it. They probably won't take it, but you've had the conversation and you had an honest conversation about what you do, and you've given them the option. Again, the example objection is it's a lot of money. Yeah, you're right. I'll just work for free. You can make that as a tongue-in-cheek response, then emphasize your value and risk you're taking on behalf of the client. You might lead off with the response with, well, first, I want to make sure you understand the value of my professional services and how they'll ultimately save you money. And second, I don't get paid unless you buy a home. I'm willing to take a risk with you and sign an exclusive agency agreement with my compensation specified. I'm willing to put my time on the line. And if you decide not to buy, that's okay with me. You can fuzzy that up in your own language, but it's basically, again, acknowledging the objection and getting them off the hook and then providing an alternative. Consider alternative compensation structures. Say, look, I understand you don't want to pay that amount of money. You feel like it's a lot of money. How about you pay an upfront and retainer fee, and I'll provide some services for that. And there may be a smaller success fee at the end. Get outside your box. Get outside the traditional brokerage mindset box of saying, it's this, it's this, it's this. It ain't this anymore. The ground underneath your feet has literally changed. You must modify and become a business person and think up solutions for your client. There is not a single professional industry out there that you walk in the door and decide to engage with that attorney or that doctor or that lawyer or whatever, that you don't know what the price is on the front end. It just doesn't happen. You go to the grocery store, you know what the prices are right there. Why do we do it any differently? Another example objection. I don't want to commit to just one agent. And I can invest my time and skills when we work in partnership is a great response, followed by, in such a competitive market, it takes time and attention to win the home you want. That's why I have other agents that pitch it in for me. If I'm booked, another person can step in. A lot of times this objection is aimed at, well, you might not be available when I want to go see a house. This is very critical that you have people lined up to cover for you when you're not there. And we see it a lot. Okay. We get calls at the office. I'm trying to reach my agent. Well, they're on vacation. I know they're on vacation. Is there somebody else that can show me this house? That's the agent's responsibility to set that up ahead of time. So we encourage you to do that. Again, think about hour rates. Think about fee for service. Think about retainer fees for itemized items. Maybe even a bonus fee for performance, and such as saving X amount of dollars during the transaction. These are all rational thoughts that we should be having as we go through this and try to figure out and navigate these waters. So here's your key points. Number one, the sky is not falling. There is a clear path forward, but the industry is going to change. Preparation is essential, but know that commission compression will continue because lazy agents won't have any other way to compete. Their initial move before they think of a rational response to an objection is, I'll just cut my price. And that's a race to the bottom. And there's a whole raft of them out there that do that. Have your conversation skills and knowledge to the level of being considered the buyer's House buying 101 professional. You are the knowledge expert, because the typical buyer's impression of the process is see house, make an offer, close, and move in. And you're going to earn the clients by helping them understand the process fully. So it's communication. Again, it goes back to the buyer presentation. You must have a buyer presentation, just as you have a listing presentation. We have got to start treating buyer agency the same way we do listing agency. That's with high quality presentation, with training, with marketing, and knowing what we're doing and knowing the process, and stop being the tour guides that we have a tendency to want to be because it's easy. It's the same process in reverse, listing, buyer, but we rarely think of it that way. You do that, and no matter what happens, you'll be fine. There's some stats here that I'll throw out there for you. The last recession, our industry experienced a 25.3% fallout rate in agent population, and I believe we will see the same with this. And therein is your magnificent opportunity. When the competition begins to flow away and you shine as a professional and you have your stuff together and you're able to communicate that and you're able to negotiate that, that's when you gather market share, and that's when you really win. We have too much competition. Let's be honest with you. This chart you're looking at there is the number of members as of May of 2023, 1.5 million. Down at the bottom, you see the U.S. population of 334 million and U.S. housing units 144 million. So per capita, that means one realtor for 215 people in the population and one realtor for 93 households in America. This is way too many people. Let me prove it to you. This is a comparison chart of realtor members. This is not all licensees. This is realtor members, and then existing home sales for the years 2000 through 2023. So let's look at this. In the year 2000, there were 766,000 realtors, and there were 5.1 million existing home sales. In 2023, 1.5 million realtors, 4.3 is the estimate on what it's going to end up this year as a run rate. Think about that for a minute. Don't we have a lot more technology now than we did in 2000? And yet we have twice as many realtors in the marketplace out there. If you go back to our current run rate, we actually should be around 1 million. That is more than 23% fallout rate. Okay. So a lot of these guys that are not going to do what I'm suggesting in this meeting are going to go out here and continue to bumble along. Political operations going away. All the major listings are going to move in-house to the larger brokerages. Guaranteed shared compensation is going away. So you're not going to get paid just for showing up with a buyer because nobody cares. Go get a job. And 300,000 to 400,000 realtors are gone. Poof. Don't be one of them. You have the ability to train. You have the ability to learn. You have the ability to grow. Now, while you have time, all this other stuff is going on and working its way through the course. And here's a big bar chart that's very confusing, I know, but this line that I just drew shows the realtor population. This line up here shows the home sale, existing home sale. So applying to the current situation, the fallout rate should be around 300,000 realtors. Simple math. It's just simple math as of what happened last time. So range of potential outcomes, we return to this graph again. On the left is the status quo. Conveniently labeled, you are here. So you understand where it is. You have the most likely in the middle, the worst case over on the right. My prediction is this is going away and this is what's going to happen. And every expert I can study, and I have spent hundreds of hours studying this, every one of them to a person is saying this is the most likely scenario. And if you're not embracing that, I've got 270 people. We peaked it right at 300 people on this call. There's 270 people that stuck with me. Thank you for that. They don't understand this. They don't know what's going on. Where are the rest of them? I hope they're studying it somewhere else. But be clear, the defendants will settle and there will be agreed upon changes and there will be lots of money changing hands. I have no idea what that looks like for the associations or the larger brokerages that may be paying that money. But these are the best class action lawsuit lawyers in the country, and they're going to get paid one way or the other. Keep in mind, as I said earlier, listing agents can still suggest to clients that something be included for a buyer's agent. The last thing a listing agent wants is a first-time home buyer showing up unrepresented. So they're going to take care of that potential outcome when they have the conversation with their seller client. I think that's going to continue. I think buyer agency is going to continue. I think the whole scenario is going to continue, and we will be better on the end than we are today because of it. Similar situation in Canada a couple of years ago. They didn't have even the buyer agency situation that we have here already. And for 18 months, it was total confusion in the marketplace. But in the end, the market and the consumer was better off because they walked through it. That's going to happen here. But if we are ignoring it, poo-pooing it, saying it's a bit of a tempest in a teapot, you'll have your legs blown out from underneath you. The bottom line is your success rests in the buyer's rep agreement. Read it, 7 pages in Tennessee, read it, and execute the buyer rep agreement at the beginning of the relationship. Many of you don't even understand the fundamentals of buyer agency itself. So educate yourself on that. We see that in our compliance process sometimes when documents come through here and you're just going, they really don't know what buyer agency means. So educate yourself on that. And then hone your skills to be able to explain your value. If you cannot articulate your value, how can a buyer understand it? They can't. You have to be able to articulate that. And we're going to help you here at Benchmark. We have not planned them out yet, but we will have many classes along these lines. And I'm going to do my best to deliver as many via Zoom as possible. Kimberly Ivory, our training director, is going to deliver them. We're going to bring the principal brokers in. They're going to deliver them. We are going to train you up on how to have a value proposition conversation with your client and how to execute the buyer's representation agreement. So help me goodness, that's what we're going to do here. And I hope for you other principal brokers that are on this call, you do exactly the same thing. We encourage you that. Please, please listen to what I'm saying. It's serious stuff. Now, beyond that, I want to say thank you for attending today. We have some comments in the chat.
Yes.
I'll just drop down here and see if we have some stuff that I can answer real fast. We did record this today. We are recording this today. And we will have the video and the slide deck posted on the Benchmark Dash in a few hours, I'm sure, as soon as it processes. And then that is available to Benchmarkians. If you want something and you're not with Benchmark, if you want a copy of it, hit me up with an email and I will send you a scaled down copy of it. But if you want to join Benchmark, you can always attend all of our training classes as well. For the United side, I probably will be offering some of this on a national basis, I think. It really depends on people that are above me to make that decision, but it is absolutely an important conversation to be having across the board. Tricia asked, can we expect TAR, Tennessee Association of Realtors, to revise the buyer's agreement to make it clearer that a buyer paying a compensation/fee is normal and regular part of the process? That is your job, Tricia, to have that conversation. And it may be that as the verbiage and language and notoriety of these cases pick up, that becomes more common knowledge. We certainly would hope so. Let's see, more and more of us so good point. More and more of us as professionals will be required to run your business like a real business rather than being a transactional hero. It's 1000% correct. You're a business person, and these situations force you to act like a business person. There's a suggestion here from Scott Saunders. The book, Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents by Phil Jones, apparently has a lot of good scripts in it. So passing that out. Exactly What to Say for Real Estate Agents by Phil Jones. Great first name. Okay, some of these are more statements than questions. I'm just going to kind of ask the questions. Okay. Yeah, Ryan, I answered your question. We did video. We are gonna paste it. I have a friend in other brokers who would be, yes, you can share the video with them. The slide deck we will have a sanitized version for those that are non-benchmarkians. Looking for a list of books or articles. They're all over the place. There are no books because this is an ongoing situation. You can read about the tobacco industry class action lawsuits. You can read about the asbestos industry class action lawsuits. And I suppose a lot of those have been memorialized in book format, but there are lots of articles out there. T360, Real Estate Insider podcasts. That is a specific one that James Wiggins and Keith Robinson do. All of these industry experts you need to be listening to because it's now becoming the main topic of conversation. What does this mean for listing agents if this happens and if buyers are unable to pay additional fee to the buyer's agent? So there's a couple of questions here that Theo's asking. So the listing agents, the whole point of this is driving toward what happens in most Western nations. If you want a seller's representation, you pay for it as the seller. If you want a buyer's representation, you pay for it as the buyer. That's how it works in most every Western or English-speaking nation in the world. Typically, those are lower percentages than what we're accustomed to here. But it's all about the value proposition. And in many cases, it's an a la carte price list for the listing agent. But as I said earlier, if you're a smart listing agent and you have in our market, a $299,000 house, you know that candidate for that house is probably a first-time home buyer. And the last thing you want is a first-time home buyer showing up unrepresented. So you probably ought to think about building something into your listing agreement that takes care of that. The next question here is, make sure I understand it. Back to the way it was where buyers call the listing agent is, okay. So that was an add-on question. So we still have buyer representation agency in Tennessee. I can't answer for other states, but in Tennessee, buyer agency exists. So you pick a side. You're either a listing agent, a seller's agent, or a buyer's agent. Used to be we were sub-agents. Everybody was a sub-agent of the seller. That's not that way by law in Tennessee. It may be still in other states. But you have to figure out how the compensation works to make sure that everybody in that transaction is equally protected and equally represented, because that's what are the five, there's 7 duties owed to your client and 5 duties owed to your consumer. You still have those 5 duties to adhere to, so you need to pay attention to that. I don't really know what NAR is going to do, and frankly, I wish they would invest more in lobbying Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to get the laws changed so we could finance buyer compensation, but that's above my pay grade, so I'm not even going to comment on that one. Lots of compliments here, and thank you very much for the compliments. I appreciate that. I have put a lot of research into this program, trying to simplify it, and as my people around me here will tell you, I've been working on it pretty steadily for 3 weeks. Can Benchmark prepare a buyer services flyer we can share with our clients? It is on the dash. We already have a buyer presentation for you on the dash. Go look at agent services, pull it up, modify it however you want to. It's a Canva product. You can click, boom, drop in your stuff, drop in market reports from the Cloud CMA, connect them all together, print it out, go sell a house or go sell a buyer. It's already there. What was the outcome in Canada? It worked out. Buyers pay their side, sellers pay their side. That's how it worked out up there. Okay. I think that's got most of them. I appreciate the accolades and the comments. Anyway, you all have my email address. It's right there on the screen. If you wish to converse about this further, I'm always happy to do that. I know way more about it than I should or want to, but that's my job. And if you're a principal broker and you're still on this call, I hope you consider that your job too. That's my encouragement. As an agent, the encouragement is to educate yourself and use the buyer's rep agreement, just as I said here. at the beginning of the conversation. All right. With that said, I think we're done. I appreciate everybody being here. For you benchmarkians, we'll have this up on the dash in the not too distant future. And I really do appreciate y'all being here and hanging with me. It's the biggest one we've ever had. Let me know if I can help you in any way. And thank you so much for being here.